Before we start with our dinner, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest for today. He's known as the growth driver because he's focusing on profitable and sustainable growth for more than 20 years now as an entrepreneur, as an author, as an editor, and as a consultant. With his consulting firm, Mandat Consulting Group in Dortmund, Germany, he has conducted more than 350 projects for more than 120 pre-known listed and non-listed companies. And his clients list includes multinational companies such as British American Tobacco, Deutsche Post WorldNet, and Mercedes-Benz, and many more. He himself says, I want participants of my speeches to take away 2 or 3 things they can immediately discuss and apply in their companies. And this shall be the objective of the following speech. I'd like to introduce you to Professor Dr. Guido Quelle.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much. Good to be here. A lot of professionals in the room. Let me, before I start, mention one thing. You are all successful people. And my speech today is called, Who Pays the Piper Calls the Tune, what private equity firms are regularly missing. So I know that you are all successful, and I want you to take away, as you said, 2 or 3 things today that you can implement with either in your portfolio or in your own firm. So let's look back. At the end of 2004, a very successful company with 3 brands was sold by their founders, by its founders, to a private equity firm. More exactly, to 2 private equity firms, 50-50. And some of you may think the right way now. There was a closing party, closing dinner as always, champagne. Everybody was in a good mood. Contract was signed before, and everybody was fine. The company was sold for approximately 800 million euro, and the founders were okay with that. And the private equity firms, the 2, were fine with that okay, as well. This could be the end of the story. Summer 2005. A nice meeting location in northern Germany, in an off-site location. And in the room there were 6 people. The CFO of the company I was talking about, the CEO of the company, who is also a brand manager. They had 3 brands. The 2 other brand managers, the new chairman interacting between the board and the management, and me. And we were in this off-site location, and one of the first things one of the brand managers said was, if anybody in these 2 days mention the term master plan, I leave. Another guy said, well, you know what, while we are talking about that, if anybody mentions at the end of the day, I leave. I said, oh, that's a great start of this initiative. Why were we together? We've been there to figure out what went wrong between the management and the board, what could be improved, you know what I'm talking about. We were together to figure out what the company could do in order to grow even stronger. It was a very successful company. It is still a very successful company. And we had the opportunity to work together with a new chairman who was really integrating himself very well. And we were really working very hard in this location 2 days. What was the result? The result was that we figured out how better to communicate between the board and the management, how to reduce the barriers. We figured out how to focus on the real core growth projects in order to make the company stronger and not weaker. And we figured out what an exit story could be later on. And how did we start that? We started by figuring out and by talking about the personal strategies, the personal visions, the personal goals and objectives of the management that was in the room. too often not regarded. The company was sold in a secondary buyout from the two private equity firms to another private equity firm in 2008. Not a good year for private equity. For, I don't know the exact figure, I think it would be about 1.3 billion. So 800 million investment, 1.3 billion, not talking about earnings, not bad a deal in 4 years. This could be the end of the story. Now the company owns, the private equity firms owns an asset that needs to be sold again, or there will be an exit strategy in terms of an IPO or whatever it is. But what we know is that the interaction between the management and the board is improved. There were a lot of turnover in the management, of course, as always, but now there is a stable and a robust structure in terms of interacting and further growing. What I want you to discuss for a minute or two is something, you know these kind of double-axis charts, right? Consultants, you know why consultants always draw double-axis charts? We can't think in a third dimension. So, let's look at this. Here is trust. And here is, well, let's say something like understanding. Not regarding your portfolio or your firms. I want you to discuss with your neighbor, where do you think most private equity and asset relationships are situated? Are they here, no trust, no understanding, or low trust, high understanding for each other's concerns, or high trust, low understanding, or high trust, high understanding? Discussion, 1 or 2 minutes, and I get back to you and ask you what you figured out. Go. Okay. Who thinks that most of the private equity and portfolio company relationships are situated in this quadrant, quadrant A? Low trust, low understanding. Okay? 1. Who thinks it is high trust, low understanding? Okay? 4. Who thinks it's high trust, high understanding? 1. You don't dare, don't you? Okay? And who thinks it's low trust, high understanding? Yeah, about 10 or so. And the others? There is no 5th quadrant. Okay, folks, seriously, that's exactly what we figured out. That's exactly what we figured out. We're quite often in a consulting engagement with private equity-owned companies in order to help them grow more profitably and help them develop a success story based on their past success. But the past success, you know, is not relevant for further success. And that's exactly what we figured out. There is a high understanding. Everybody understands what the other side wants to do. Everybody understands what the goals of the other side are. But there's no trust. I don't know what they want me to do. I don't know what they really think. What is the hidden agenda here on both sides, private equity-wise and company-wise? I don't say that this is a scientific result of our studies. It's just an experience. And you may figure out that it's in your business it's different. But if this is the case, just presuming it, the question would be, what can we earn more? What can we do more profitably if we switch from here to here? What is in it here? And I think no one of us in the room is able to calculate this. But everybody of us knows that if it is possible to get from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3 there's a lot of money in it. And not only money. The reason for the title of this speech, Who Pays the Piper Calls the Tune, is that we observed that, very often the companies that were purchased by private equity just act as they are supposed to act, or as they think they are supposed to act, by the board or the investors. And that doesn't necessarily lead to the best results. I have 5 points for this evening. Maybe we can discuss it later. We observed as main barriers between private equity firms and their assets. You may have other 5 points. I have these. Number 1, too much focus on money. Hard to say this in such an environment, but there is the emergency exit. Too much focus on money. People in the firms we take care of, we consult with, are often not interested in more money. They have a good salary, they get a bonus, they are then, when the private equity firm is there, they get a part of the MPP, the Management Participation Program, and they earn even more money, but they don't run faster because they can't, or they don't know where to run. So very often in discussions between private equity firms and their companies, there is the discussion about money, but people are interested in content. People are interested, the people who sign a contract at the firm they are working at are interested in content. A designer is interested in designing. A leader is interested to lead a group, to lead a group. And it's not that much the money that drives them. It's autonomy. It's acting within defined guardrails as independently as possible. It's talking about a job that makes sense and that has an exciting content to work on. It's not about the money. Do what you want, implement your bonus systems, implement your management participation program, and so on. What you reach is you get them a bit closer because they invested money to this management participation program also. But they don't run faster. So number 1, too much focus on money. Number 2, related to that, too much focus on controlling systems. The private equity firms, the 2 firms that sold the company I was talking about a few minutes ago, installed a very effective controlling system. And that's a core competency of private equity firms, as I understand it. And then there was the new private equity firm taking over this asset, and what did they do? Installed a new controlling system called Control Tower. Useless. Absolutely waste of time. Everybody was involved there, the management, the second level, even the third level, balanced scorecards were implemented. Waste of time. The controlling system was great. We were talking about first level private equity firms. They don't do any bad controlling systems. So if it's necessary from your point of view to install a new controlling system, then do respect that the people who need to implement it have also an operational responsibility in the firm. And all the time, you can spend 1 hour just once. All the time invested in the controlling system can be invested to grow the business. Number 3, and that's really a point, and that's something we also figured out in our study, GROW, that was conducted between private equity firms and their companies. That's something that was mentioned really often, is that some private equity firms are trying to be a better business expert. And we were joking about this in the break before, or in the opening time before. In 2007, 2008, 2009, when there was silence at the investment market, or even more silence than it is today, I heard very often that the management of companies that were owned by private equity said, come on, it's time that the investment weather, quote unquote, gets better because the private equity guys have too much time on their hand. They're taking care of our business. The focus on core competencies, like on the private equity side, controlling, financing, funding, expanding, M&A, international network, this is extremely valuable. And as long as the private equity firms don't think that the firm they acquired does a poor business, the private equity firms are better advised not to get too deep into the operational business of the firms. Who pays the piper calls the tune. When the management recognizes that the private equity management or the board members or whoever gets too deep into the business, they say, okay, let them do the job. Dangerous. Don't let them out of this. It's dangerous. Number 4 of 5. It relates a bit with what I talked before because it could sound counterintuitive. But as well as you, as private equity professionals, are well advised not to get too deep into the operational business of the companies, you're well advised to take care of the interaction between the management, and their subordinates, into the leadership procedures, and into the people. So you need interest in the people you are buying, quote unquote, because at the end of the day, you're not buying just a system or a structure or a product or an idea, you're buying people. And we all know that if people are really on board, if people are really motivated, this is a real asset that can make the can make things happen that no one has thought of before. So if you have the opportunity in the due diligence to sit in a meeting, I don't know if this is possible because everything is confidential, yada, 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 but if you have the opportunity to sit in a meeting to see how people interact, to see how people lead, to see how people talk to customers, this is really a good thing to do. If there is the opportunity, take care of this thing. Very important. And by the way, when you get back home, you may think about the following double axis chart. Will and ability. Where are the people you see located? Is there low ability and low will, boycotters? Is there low will, high ability? This is really dangerous. These are breakers, growth breakers. Is there low ability, high will to do something? This is the rough diamond quadrant. Or we all know high will, high ability is multiplier. And I see that you're already thinking about certain people in these quadrants. Don't ask the guys and the persons who are taking care of the human resources business about that, because they say, well, you know what, in order to get here, we just need to do trainings. And this is wrong, simply wrong, because the only direction trainings work is this. You can train ability, you can get people to be more capable of doing things. You cannot. This is a wall. You cannot get there by training. You cannot raise the will to do something by training. Every cent spent for motivational programs is wasted. This requires, to get here, requires dialogue. This requires conversations, because in order to get here, to get over this wall, you need to answer the following question. What's in it for me? Why should I change? WIIFM, what is in it for me? Why should I change? Word is good, word is great, money is coming, I'm a member of the management participation program, perfect. Next exit, I'm rich. Why should I change? And this is the question you need to answer. By the way, this is an excerpt from my book, Profitable Growth, Release Internal Growth Breaks and Bring Your Company to the Next Level, page 31. And I have a special offer for you tonight. if you give me your business card, you want to have this book, I send it to you for free. Complimentary issue just tonight. Release growth base. Number 5, my final point. And this point is maybe the most important one. I call it the PI point. And PI is project inflation. An exploding project landscape. Too many things to focus on, so there is no focus. There are not projects missing. There are too many projects in the companies we know. The companies we know, and we are engaged for this very often, can reduce their project portfolio by 50% without missing anything. On the contrary, they focus their efforts more, and the remaining projects are more successful. Test it in any medium-sized or large company. You can just kill 50% of the projects, and you have a better effect on the bottom line. Because focus has something to do with concentrating and not with distracting. And if this is a company you purchased, something we very often observe is that when the deal is done, a lot of projects are initiated. 70 projects, whatever. And when we have a look at the company 1 year later, what about growth? I'm talking about profitable growth. We observe the following. Yes, something happened. When we work with companies and we are focusing their project landscape, their project portfolio, we have another approach. I can't change the company, so this is the same. But what we are doing is we're focusing efforts directly to the most important points. And when we then look at a company 1 year later, what about the growth of the company? We see something like the following. Could it be more? Maybe. But one thing is sure. Here, you have a lot of activity and a lot of discussion. And here, you have good results. Thank you so much. Thank you.